thank you for joining me to talk about knowledge and information management. For those of you I've not met before, which I think there's a couple of new people I've not actually met online in this way before, so it's lovely to have you here. I am Claire Patterson of CP Data Protection and the DISH, which is Data in Social Housing, a network for people working in data in social housing. And I joined forces with Joe Leckie of Big Picture Training, who many of you will know as well, to really look at what we could do to help the sector, the housing sector. But as I said earlier, this does apply to all sorts of organisations, to improve their knowledge and information management. And this is because it's something that we are passionate about anyway. But we also had the Housing Ombudsman do their first spotlight on a topic, spotlight report on a topic that spans lots of different areas. So usually they would do a spotlight report on sound complaints or on shared ownership. But this one was from May 2023, and it is on knowledge and information management, which goes across the board. And if we've learned anything from looking at all the knowledge and information management, is it cannot be underestimated just how wide reaching poor Kim and good Kim can be. I do really feel sorry for anybody actually called Kim working in housing at the moment, because the Housing Ombudsman keeps blaming Kim for all the ills in the housing world, which is it's not very fair. I've worked with some amazing Kims in housing, but knowledge, information management, data management, knowing stuff, customer data, just anything and everything that relates to what we know. So it's about our customers, but it's also about our properties, our assets. It's also finance information. It's policies and procedures. It's knowing what to do at the right time. The original report came out in May 2023 and included 21 recommendations to improve knowledge and information management in the sector. And 21 doesn't sound too bad. I've had audit reports where a lot more than that have come out in the recommendations. But when you start looking at them, some of them are massive recommendations. So overall, there's a long way to go. Some of the examples that the Housing Ombudsman Service have highlighted just show some of the poor service and poor complaint handling, because that's how a case gets to the Housing Ombudsman. It's a complaint that goes to the landlord, doesn't get dealt with to the satisfaction of the customer, the tenant, and then it goes to the Housing Ombudsman. So they are only seeing the bad stuff unless they go out and ask about the good stuff. But they are seeing tenants getting frustrated. They're having to repeat themselves every time they phone in, every time they try and chase up a repair. It's like they've got to start at the beginning again. Repairs are delayed. They're not happening when they should. Not just repairs, but maintenance or emergency things even just aren't happening because it's not getting recorded properly and the information's getting lost. And of course, tenants are losing patience and they're losing faith in the sector and in their landlords, which we can completely understand why. It's just as frustrating for us as colleagues. I know from, first-hand experience, if we don't know where something is, if we don't know what we're supposed to do or where to go for something, it is so frustrating. You feel like your hands are tied behind your back and you can't get on with your job. The Housing Ombudsman did a follow-up report earlier this year, and they did find some good practice. They did find some improvements were being made, but one of the things they highlighted that most organisations seem to be really struggling with was benchmarking. So benchmarking your Kim practices against other organisations. So we developed a benchmarking survey based largely on those recommendations, those 21 recommendations, but also our own experience from the sector, what we know is problematic, what we know would be good practice. and we asked these questions. We gave you a list of statements and asked people to either agree or disagree, and they could strongly agree or strongly disagree as well. We asked you about what your biggest challenges were and a wish list for if you could just wave a magic wand, what would you want in place to improve Kim in your organisation? We received 25 responses, which isn't huge compared to the number of housing associations across the UK. But the really encouraging thing was there were all sorts of different sizes of landlords who responded, and we were across the whole, the geography of the whole of the UK. So it gave us a really good snapshot. So a massive thank you to anyone who's here who was involved in that. We really, really appreciate everybody taking part, otherwise it just wouldn't have happened. So on to the interesting bits, the headlines. What did we find? So those of you who filled it in, or if you've seen it or you've seen the recommendations, we were talking about things like, first of all, do you have a written Kim strategy? Do the leaders in your organisation appreciate how important Kim is? Do colleagues know how to report a safeguarding concern? Do you have IT systems that integrate and synchronise? I try not to laugh. That is a question we ask because we would like to know if anybody does. Anybody willing to shout out what they thought might have been? Let's start with the good stuff. What kind of things people were confident in? What kind of things people were agreeing and strongly agreeing with? Anyone willing to take a guess? Some of you know because we've had conversations, so that's slightly cheating. Go with your own feelings. What are you finding in your organisation? What, if anything, are you doing well when it comes to Kim? Is it strategy? Is it responsibility? Is it understanding? Is it knowing where all your information is? Is it having clear naming conventions on files? Is it a data breach plan? Sorry, go on. Oh, I thought we had someone there. Oh no, let me just pop you on mute there because I think that's just background noise. Is anyone seeing anything that you're doing well? Or are we just all really, really struggling? Okay, I'm going to take that silence as we are all really, really struggling. So we did have some good responses. Not everyone was disagreeing across the board. We had, and this is really, really encouraging to me, the most strongly agreed with statement was, drum roll, we have a clear and well communicated data breach response plan. Pause to see people's reactions. I was really, really pleased to see that. However, those of you who know me will know I am quite cynical, sceptical, like to check things. I'd want to do a bit more of a deep dive to see how well communicated that actually is and how it actually works in practice. Because I think data breach response plans I think should always be improving, should always be being worked on. Every time something comes up, I'm dealing with a couple of breaches at the moment. Not my own, obviously, I've not caused breaches. No worries. And I'm looking at my data breach response plan that I work to for clients, and I'm going, oh, actually, I'm going to add that in there. I'm going to add that in there. We're going to make that more clear. So it is something that needs to always be being built. And I know some of you here have got really robust, tested data breach response plans. So that was good to hear. Number two, the second most strongly agreed with was colleagues know how to report safeguarding concerns. So that is really encouraging as well, that we are getting the word out there. When we say colleagues, we mean anyone and everyone that might come into contact with something that they're concerned about, and they know where to go. Or that's what people are telling us, that they know where to go. And then the third one, so I'm only going to do the top three and then the bottom three, that we encourage colleagues to share knowledge and best practices across teams. So we shouldn't really be surprised by that. In housing, we are always trying to do the right thing. We are trying to share best practice with each other. And we are encouraging that we're open, we don't gatekeep knowledge. If we know a way to do something a bit slicker, or we've noticed that something's not quite right, that we are sharing that across our teams. So that's brilliant. However, the most strongly disagreed with, we've got two at joint first. And I'm going to pick up on the one that goes with that, encouraging colleagues to share knowledge and best practice, is that for shared files, we do not have a clear naming convention and folder structure. So the way of explaining that isn't very clear. The statement was, we have a clear naming convention and folder structure, and that was completely disagreed with. Very much across the board, that was disagreed with. That we don't know how to save things consistently, how to make sure that they are findable, whether they're in the right library, if we're using SharePoint, if we're using lists, if we're using, just folders, or are we using inboxes to file things in, which I know isn't what we should be doing, but definitely people do it. And then this will be no surprise. The other joint first on the most strongly disagreed with was our IT systems integrate and synchronize seamlessly across departments and teams. So hands up anyone who's surprised and thinks that actually their IT systems and across the board in housing are great. No hands up, of course. We know this is an issue, and it's not just in housing. The exponential growth of the amounts of systems that we can purchase, that we can access free. Chris has done amazing work on shadow IT. He talked at the Hive Live last year on the rise of shadow IT and how IT teams don't necessarily know all the apps, all the cloud-based software that colleagues are using. Because they're just signing up because they're either free or very cheap, or they get signed off at a low level because they don't cost that much. And actually they might be putting loads and loads of customer data, colleague data, asset data in there. So that's one issue with IT. But the big one that we're all seeing is that the systems just don't speak to each other. We're adding on more and more systems, especially as we diversify in housing. If we're doing market rental, market sales, if we are doing employment support or budgeting support, we're adding layers upon layers upon layers of IT systems. So that is a big, huge area. And then, so that's joint first, and then the third most strongly disagreed with was just simply that we have a written KIM strategy. So that surprised me, actually. I thought more of us might have a written KIM strategy. By show of hands, just the people that are in this room today, because you do overlap with the people that filled in the questionnaire, but there's some differences here as well. Do you have a written KIM strategy in your organisation that is live? Would you put a hand up if you do? Okay, right, no live ones. Oh, one. We have one live one. Okay. What about, let's go to if you've got a draft one. It's not live, it's draft, it's in the middle of being looked at. Okay, we've got another one. Just one? Okay, have you started to, hands up if you've started to think about one. Okay, hand there, 2, 3. Okay. So that does align with what we're seeing there. So that's as I say, you overlap, but you're not exactly the same people. So that is interesting. And actually, we felt that that is probably the easiest place to start, and the not easiest, the most sensible place to start. I will highlight, though, quite interestingly, we had two people in the same organisation filled the questionnaire in. They did seem to work in different areas. Okay, might have been overzealous. We have a draft. So we're in that kind of draft, thinking about it kind of area. So two people seem to work in different areas of one organisation, a large organisation. And one of them agreed that they had a KIM strategy and one disagreed. So you could have absolutely the best strategy, policy, anything. But if not everybody knows about it, it may as well not exist. So that was really, really interesting. And then the strengths and weaknesses that we saw from those agree, disagree, were reflected in those challenges that we asked people for their biggest challenges and the wish list responses as well. So a lot of people talked about, if I kind of put them all together, we are seeing systems, IT systems, centralised, being able to share information, lack of integration, but we're also seeing culture a lot. We are seeing lack of governance. We want a data culture. Oh, James in. We've got it's way too informal, so we want more data governance. We are concerned about the data quality, because of course you can have all the data in the world, but if it's not right, if it's not accurate, it's not up to date, it's useless. Worse than useless, because it actually causes problems. We've got poor user experience of some of your systems, which leads to not recording information. That really chimed with me. I have been guilty in the past myself in my own business of going, right, I'm going to set up this really fancy system so that I can record what I'm doing and my policies and procedures and all sorts of things. And I when I first set out to do this, I made it too fancy. So guess what? I didn't use it. So I had to just bring it down a lot of notches so that the user experience, that customer experience, as me as the customer of my own systems, was frictionless. It's easier for me to do what I do now. And then I have more information to hand. Having one source of the truth without reliance on spreadsheets. So it's not just that the systems are a pain, we're kind of then adding on spreadsheets as well. So culture and systems came through really, really strongly. Ownership is a big one as well. I think that's part of culture. Again, does that chime, or shout out or pop a hand up or put something in the chat if there is something else that you would want to add to that list? Either if you're coming to it fresh today, is there something else that we're missing? Because we're just trying to gather as much information about this as we can, so that one, people know sort of where they are in the benchmarking, because that's what it's all about, but also so we know next steps. So we've got here lack of skills in KIM in the sector. That's really true as well. Yeah, I think it's part of it is knowing what KIM is and why it's so important, and why it's not something that you can put off for another day. We've come across people kind of going, oh yeah, we'll think about that later. I'll make a note of it now on a scrap of paper and I'll upload it to the system later. And of course, later never comes, does it? Because you're too busy in the day job. So this part of it is about understanding that it is important, but it is also the lack of skills in the kind of strategy area and in the management of it. How do we make sure that we have got easy to use systems? So think about things that go into getting a new system, right from the start of thinking about, oh, actually, this is a bit dodgy, let's change it, through to it being completely embedded. People have been trained on using it and they're using it properly. Massive, massive project. Really good question. What about the medium that the data is stored on? Now, you're way more technical than me, so you have said things there that I don't really understand. HMS, Housing Management System, of course, SharePoint, Core VU, I don't know what that means, etc. I know what that means. But there's needs to be consistency and understanding about where we should be putting this information. So it's in the right place and it can be shared and it can be found. Or if it shouldn't be shared, if it's something really, really confidential that shouldn't be shared, that it goes somewhere where it doesn't get found accidentally or shared accidentally. And I think the SharePoint point as well, too many points, comes back to that point. Sorry. Comes back to the question of how do we share information across teams? We're saying we encourage our colleagues to share best practice, share policies and procedures. Have you got one place where everybody goes to find the most up-to-date version of a policy? Or are they stored in somebody's inbox or their own file folder system? And it just says, data protection policy, final, version 3, absolute final, and you're not quite sure which one you really should be using. So the wish list. This was great. So I asked people if they had a magic wand, they could just wave it. We got some really big wishes, and then other things that really quite quickly doable. So the things that we can't just wave a magic wand for you, unfortunately, are the things like an integrated housing and finance system that allows all the documents and all the data to be stored in one place. Easier housing systems that are dynamic, fully integrated platform from contact centre to contractor to customer. You know where this is going. There's loads more like that. Can't do that in the click of the fingers, but we can do that. We can help with that. As I said, this is not just me or not just me and Joe. This is a team effort. And I am blessed with knowing and being involved in a group of amazing technical people. I know lots of technical people out there. I know I've always called SharePoint a repository with attitude because it's relatively easy to screw it up. Yes.
And relatively difficult to get information out if you've not got access.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's like most tools, if it's used properly, it can be great. If it's not used properly, it's more trouble than it seems worth sometimes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You can have horrific structures in it.
Definitely. So that shows it's not just a case of off the shelf going, oh, we're going to have SharePoint or we're going to buy this new system. Any system needs to be set up in the right way. So as I said, I have got an amazing network of people who do know this stuff much better than I do in terms of the technology. And as I say, this is, a team effort, and there are things that we can do to help the sector there. So we will be working on that in the background. The things that we can do more immediately are things like an affordable all singing, all dancing learning package for colleagues at all levels to understand the role of kin in social housing, including why it's important and why they need to do it in their own roles. We can absolutely get on that quite quickly if there is an appetite for it and people do want something like that. The other thing that we can get on quite quickly is information asset register. So one of the recommendations from the Housing Ombudsman was have an information asset register. Now, those of us here who work as data will know that we have to have a ROPA. So we have a records of processing activities, or ROPA. And I'm seeing, or I'm having conversations with people who already have their ROPA, an organisation has a ROPA, which is a little bit dusty and doesn't get looked at very often. Housing Ombudsman says have an IAR, so that's getting built. And then, of course, we've got STAIRS coming in to the housing world, which is the new name for the access of tenants to information. So it's like FOIA, freedom of information by the back door, no pun intended, for housing. And we've got to be ready for that. And we've got to have certain things that we know where to find them. And there are going to be registers for that. So I am seeing people talking about 3 different, but very similar kind of repositories for information. So we don't want to be doing this in silos. That is the biggest problem. In my 20-ish years in housing, all we talk about is silos and breaking them down. What is our biggest challenge? It's working in silos. How can we improve? We can stop working so much in silos. In my previous life, I worked in manufacturing and in quality assurance and a bit of health and safety as well. And silos was an issue there as well. We had all the different teams that did different bits of the process, and they didn't always speak to each other. When we got them speaking to each other and it became one big process that different people were involved in along the way, everything improved. Everything got much smoother. The culture improved. That feeling of ownership on the end product, everything improved. It's more of a struggle in housing, I feel, to break those silos down. They seem to be more
Well, it's
built
part of the
even more
culture, isn't it?
part of the culture. It's a negative part of the culture. Absolutely. Yeah. It's not going away with a wave of a magic wand, unfortunately, but it is definitely something we need to work on. So the little bit that I can help with very soon on that is a combined ROPA and information asset register solution that I'm working on with, again, a very talented more technically minded person than me, Dave Wiley, some of you know, and we are combining ROPA and information asset register and making it easy to use, user friendly. It's not there yet. We haven't built it yet, but that is something that we're hoping to be able to offer out to the sector more widely very, very soon. We did have a comment in here that I've been trying to create a comprehensive IAR for years, and the NatFed guidance is poor at best and has significant organisational holes as well as lacks details on it. So it would be great to magically have this in place. So we are working on that. That is one of the things that we should be able to help plug that gap, hopefully. And then a really big ask at the end, and again, really sorry I don't actually have a magic wand, but this comes back to what you're saying, Tony, about the culture, a more open and transparent sector that is unafraid to say it has made mistakes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that a background in quality assurance management and health and safety management really makes me extra keen on. And I've seen how it works so well in those spheres. You can't keep improving unless you say, any help, super welcome. Yeah, absolutely. We will speak to you about that later. It does seem there is an appetite for it, but you cannot make improvements unless you are unafraid to say, well, that wasn't as good as it could have been, and so we're going to improve. We can't just say, yeah, we are absolutely our best, but we still need to improve. We have got to be open and honest and say that wasn't ideal, to be very, very say it very lightly, but that was an error. That isn't good. We are working in silos too much. We have made mistakes. I'm seeing loads and loads of comments and posts on LinkedIn at the moment talking about, in the housing sector in particular, are we waiting for a tragedy to happen to kick us into action? And I'm like, waiting. We are having tragedies week in and week out. We have got the headline tragedies. We've had how many years ago now since Grenfell? Our Abishak. Daily stories. There was one I saw, I think it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I was reading Hello Insomnia this morning about a local authority who had a woman living in one of their homes who was fleeing from in a domestic violence situation. And the local authority, the council that looked after her home, was supposed to be putting, I forget the word, target hardening measures in place on her home. She had a back patio door that didn't lock, and they were supposed to be doing something to make it lock. And she went without that for months. Every night she's trying to do a makeshift barrier on her patio door and sitting in silence so that she can hear if her ex-partner is trying to get into the house. It is day in, day out, we're having tragedies. We have got to start admitting that we are making mistakes so that we can move on and make improvements. So how do we do that? What are our next steps? So there has been, I say, some signs of movement, but we still need to do a lot more. So how? We know we need to change the culture. We need to change the outcomes. We have got, and we did think that today we might be trying to drum up some interest in. We've already booked, but it's already sold out, a workshop we're doing for the DIN network, so the Disruptive Innovators Network. So I think it's only for DIN members, run by Dish and Big Pitch Training. And we've got some guests as well, held at Amazon HQ in London, which I am absolutely intrigued to see. And we're going to be looking at KIM strategy. By the end of the day, everyone that's in there will have a draft KIM strategy that they are ready to flesh out and make it their own. Make it work, make it live, not just have these, we're thinking about doing it. So, as I say, we thought we'd be trying to drum up a bit of interest, but actually that sold out a couple of weeks ago. So we are, of course, open to doing more of that if there is an appetite for it. Many of you have been to the Dish workshops where we do similar, but with a different strategy. We did an AI strategy, we did EDI strategy policy, call it what you want. This is a full day in person. I'm really, really looking forward to it. So we can do more of that. We can also do, we've got something set up with our friends over at Digital Bark, which is uncovering the hidden costs of poor KIM in the tenant journey in particular, and how to harness the power of good KIM. And that's about bite-sized, so what they call it, Digital Bark. It's whole dog themed stuff that Dave Loudon does over at Digital Bark. And that's a remote thing that we're offering through that. But also we are open to tell us what you need and we will provide as far as we can. And like I said, we can't just snap our fingers and make all the IT systems work, but we will use our network and we will find absolutely what we can and we'll provide what we can. Big Pitch Training has got some amazing things to come that they do online training, they do e-learning, they do in-person training, and of course I do as well. In exciting news, I have my own wheels now for the first time again in 5 years since lockdown, when I got rid of my car, and I now have my own car. So I am really looking forward to getting out and seeing people in person a lot more. I'm going to come and visit you all a lot more. That is your warning. And be warned, I'm going to come and see some of you. And we've got a couple of blog posts. I'll make sure you get all the links to those. I'll make sure you get all these headline results that I've talked about. We'll share all that later. But for the next, oh my goodness, I've been talking for 40 minutes almost. The next 20 minutes, I just want to open up the floor for discussion, and we'll see where we go from here, what next steps can we actually take? I am going to turn off the recording.